is no werewolf here.
There's no werewolf.
No werewolves in space.
Good morning.
Good morning. We are Tentacle Quill.
Tentacle Quill, episode 2. Oh my god.
Episode 2 already, yeah.
So yeah, Andy Weir's The Martian. We don't have this in physical paperback or hardback. We've
Shame
got.
Shame on us.
Well, the flat would be overflowing. True favourite of ours.
Mm-hmm. So basically what it is, and I learned this term recently, a Robinsonade.
A Robinsonade? Oh,
yes.
It sounds like a cola you drink.
It's a term for when a book is centered about one person being cast away from society.
Robin Crusoe.
And basically this is Robinson Crusoe in space.
Yeah, on Mars.
Yeah.
I mean, I think most people know it from the movie,
Yes,
which I think is a fairly faithful adaptation.
Indeed.
And I'd love to talk just about the adaptation and the choices of media transfer sometime, but that wasn't what we were going to talk about today. So briefly, I think a lot of people have seen the movie or read the book.
Indeed.
But just to summarise it, as you've so lovely done, it's a Robin Crusoe story, told mostly through diary entries.
And the main character is called Mark Watney, and he is left on Mars after an accident when his crew evacuates the planet. He is a botanist, and basically the whole story is told first person from his perspective about trying to survive on Mars.
Really,
Andy Weir really does good, charismatic characters that you care about, and the I format of the narrative also really helps. You really get to put yourself in his shoes, so to speak.
It keeps what could otherwise be a dull or low stakes narrative very high stakes and emotional.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. So, I mean, that kind of brings us very neatly onto what we wanted to talk about, using, again, one book as our little thing. This is going to be our thing. Player versus environment versus player versus player.
Yes. It's usually a term used in gaming.
Yeah.
But we're using it as in, does the main character have to contend with other persons in the narrative? Is it a lot of personal conflict, which would be PvP, or PvE, where this character or characters, not always just a single one, has to fight against the environment rather than other people?
Yeah, I've never heard anyone else use the term, at least in relation to narrative. We started using it because we got very frustrated with other space content, and I think The Martian holds it up so well that you're rooting for Mark to overcome the environment and the environmental challenges. No one's at fault in the book.
No, there's no antagonists in this book, which is really nice, because sometimes it's hard to write a good villain and to have that villain have a motivation that carries through and can't just be resolved by here, give him the ice cream that he's been wanting since chapter 1.
And I mean, as much as I love, and I think the classic story is PvP, it has a protagonist and an antagonist. I think there's a reason why that's, in a lot of cases, some of the strongest stories we tell. I do miss, and it's something I think we used to have more of, and is a bit thinner on the ground these days, player versus environment stories.
Yes, definitely.
Overcoming challenge.
Especially in harsh environments, when the story is, for example, set in space or a different planet.
I mean, this is the thing. It's basically, I think a lot of people, mostly for narrative needs, they'll be writing a book about some disaster of some kind, or some very challenging thing of some kind, and rather than tackling that environment problem, which, and I think this is why people do it, it requires more nuance, it's harder to write, it requires a lot more research to write a convincing how to overcome this environmental problem. They focus on the human drama.
Yes.
which can be compelling, but you know, we've all got lots of human drama stories, and I think human drama often does better in more mundane settings
Definitely.
end of the world. And that's the other thing. If you study history, in real times of tragedy, generally speaking, humans band together.
Yes, I mean, I don't really want to bring up the pandemic during the Sophie discussion.
Well, the Blitz is a good example.
For example, but we've seen time and time again that rather than people expecting, it's going to be the purge, everyone's going to be running around killing each other, we saw people just banding together, do community stuff, volunteering.
And I mean, that doesn't mean that people aren't going to take advantage sometimes. I mean, even during the Blitz, you know, we did have scam artists and all kinds of stuff going on, but they are in the extreme minority, generally speaking. No one is actively sabotaging others.
No, it's just that they have different motives, different motivations, different priorities. There's no murderer in there. There is no werewolf here.
There's no werewolf.
No werewolves in space.
Well, I don't know. That sounds interesting.
Yeah, it could be fun. But how do you transform when the moon is always visible?
I mean, it's a conundrum. It's a conundrum. Solar cycles, clearly. But to bring it back to the Martian, I think the thing that makes PvE hard to write is it does require research.
Yes.
Because even though the Martian is meticulously researched, he's got... so this is a concept, if you're an independent author, you might not have been exposed to, is subject matter expert editors. So this is like if you're writing a book about space and you need expert consultation. You can talk to people before you start writing. You can ask experts to read over your work, but then you can actually get scientific or technical editors who will do line editing or will look at sections of technical writing and go, well, that's just ridiculous. And it's usually not a big change that you have to make. It's usually relatively small changes. So I think the famous one that still made it to print for this one is Martian soil or regolith. Could actually never be used for farming because it's just way too irradiated. But the reader usually isn't a subject matter expert.
Yep.
So as long as your environment is consistent and provides genuine stakes and problems that are solved through, I think people are entertained. So yes, a good example in The Martian is the orbital mechanics stuff.
Yes, indeed.
Right? And that can provide a lot of tension. So like this is also, I think, kind of what we're talking about with PvE, because why it comes up with space so often. Space is deadly. Space just wants to kill you.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think one of the things that a lot of authors struggle with, and
it's also a bit of a tightrope between making it entertaining to read while staying as true as possible, because...
But I think having some faith in the reader, you know, I mean, obviously you have to do the work, and Andy does the work of making the character carry you through the narrative. But the situation of I'm going to run out of oxygen, say, in 3 days.
Yes.
You can't watch the oxygen deplete for 3 days.
No.
It depresses your reader. It depresses the characters. It's just, it grinds you down. But the reality of the situation is that's a panic situation. That's a real hard problem to solve. It's almost never the bomb is about to explode and 1 second's left on the clock, right? And so how do you make the slow oxygen leak something really intense and interesting? You time skip.
Yeah.
You go through the characters' internal narratives, their problem-solving process.
Yeah, and it's also the fact that environment can't be reasoned with. You can't talk your way out of this. You have to get on with it, so to speak. It doesn't help for the character to sit there and sulk. They have to find a solution, because Mars doesn't care about you. Mars is just like, it's just there, it's just doing its thing. No, if there's one thing I would have loved in this book is him like tripping over like a random rover or something, because at this point we have a lot of rovers on Mars.
Yeah, there's a lot of rovers.
Just like a little rover on a leash.
I mean, there is a moment.
Yes.
But
Just reaching that.
yeah, I think there's a great point with the whole PvE thing, is because it's so environment problem solving based. Deus Ex Machina or solutions out of nowhere, godly interventions don't feel great.
No.
You can have random chance, like storms. You can have random discovery of new food, or
Yeah. There might be windfalls. So to
windfalls.
speak.
Yeah, that's the word. Windfalls. It's mostly him rummaging through his crewmates' supplies.
No, he basically it's like one of those survival games where you start with an inventory, and Mark has this inventory and he works with what he's got basically. Because of the remote location of the book, it's not like you can airdrop in a character or a cameo or whatever.
But I think that's also why a Robin Crusoe story is probably one of the easier PvEs to write.
Indeed.
Because there's the alternative, which is like, if you're writing in, say, someone's starting up in business.
Yes.
There's a lot more sort of chaos because you're in society, whereas because the Martian is, or Robin Crusoe story is on an island, the reader on like the first chapter or two kind of gets, this is the inventory we have to work with, or this is the solution space.
And he is very good at keeping track of all that. It's really hard. Basically, you need a spreadsheet to just keep track of what has my character got, what can he work with, what has he got, and then as you introduce problems and try to solve them, you need to figure out what would this character have, what is in their survival pack, so to speak.
Yeah. I think if I was to write a Robin Crusoe story, obviously I'd use spreadsheets and stuff. I've taken a few swings at it. But I think also just like physically printing out or making little paper things would be a great way of just
like little 3D printed suitcases and stuff like that. That would be so cute.
I think because you as a writer need to give yourself the advantage of having a better view on the problem than the audience.
Yes.
Because you need to be able to think it through. And think it through with other people, right?
Indeed. Yeah, like... Because often in this book, a problem is not solved just by Mark Watney alone. It is solved by the people around him, especially later on in the book, where they offer him solutions, choose communications, and he doesn't always agree with them, but he knows he needs to work with them. No, we're talking about like incremental increases, like this will give you 20% more potatoes, or this will stretch it for 3 days more. And
no, but I mean, like, you as the writer might miss something as a way of solving a problem.
Yes.
But that's fine, because your character might miss it too.
Yes. There's a lot of human fallibility in these things. Like, there's a lot of times where Mark Watney has a solution to a problem, but then when he tries to put it in motion, something blows up, often literally. And that's kind of part of the fun.
Yeah, and the thing is if you make a mistake like that, and you are in the editing process, resolving the mistake doesn't necessarily mean rewriting it. It could mean inserting a line or two, usually not where the problem on your edit is, but like a chapter or 5 earlier.
Yes.
That sort of justifies why that wasn't possible, or why your character wouldn't think that's possible. That's because that's all that really matters, right? Does the character think it's possible?
I can't believe I forgot I packed these nail clippers.
So we don't have anything to promote. As this podcast is going out, I'll be doing Ludum Dare. That'll be going out. Then.
I'll just be writing.
You're still writing. Nothing to promo there. And let us know what you think. Give us the feedbacks. And we've been Tentacle Quill. Wee.
Have a good day.
Keep writing. Boosh.